Enough with treating this roster like it is just some cute little promise. The Chargers are heading into 2026 with a serious bet on the table. Ladd McConkey has to turn into a star. Omarion Hampton can punish defenses if that line finally holds up. Justin Herbert gets Mike McDaniel to raise the ceiling of this offense. And Tuli Tuipulotu cannot be left waiting while the future of the pass rush hangs in the balance. Hit that like button, because today the demand is simple. Is Los Angeles going to attack this window or waste another year? The first punch lands exactly where a lot of fans expected a loud signing. The Chargers are getting close to training camp without adding a massive veteran name to the receiver room. No fantasy spin here. The I.J. Brown interest went nowhere. The Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill links never gained real traction. And Brennan Thompson, drafted for his speed, brings real juice to this offense. He can be a motion piece, a vertical threat, and a dangerous slot weapon. But the fair question is whether Los Angeles should be asking a rookie speed weapon to immediately carry the weight of a full-time outside answer. So the question gets uncomfortable for Los Angeles. If you did not bring in that big outside addition, who is carrying that bill? The answer has a first name, a last name, and a massive amount of pressure sitting on his back. Ladd McConkey. And look, I have no issue with an aggressive bet on internal talent. What I will not accept is acting like this bet is small, because the Chargers are not just saying, "We like our group." In practice, they are saying McConkey can become the engine of the passing game inside Mike McDaniel's offense. That changes everything. In 2024, as a rookie, he already proved he was not just some second-round promise. 82 catches, 1,149 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That is ready-made production, veteran-level calm, and separation from a player who understands space. But 2025 slowed that rise down. With Keenan Allen back and Greg Roman leaning into the veteran possession game, McConkey lost volume. He dropped to 66 targets, finished with 789 yards and 35 first downs. Then people see the dip and try to shrink the player. Wrong. Context matters. The offense was not built to maximize what he does best. Now McDaniel steps in, and this is where the story becomes dangerous for defenses. If McConkey works mostly out of the slot, with freedom to attack zones, catch on the move, snap routes off on time, and turn short throws into chunk gains, he can become exactly the piece that gets Justin Herbert out of save everything by yourself mode. He averaged 4.7 yards after the catch in the previous scheme, even without the ideal setup. Now picture that in a structure built around yak, rhythm, and timing. That is the point. The Chargers do not need to prove McConkey is good. He already showed that. They need to prove they know how to build an offense that turns him into a star. And if that bet hits, the whole conversation about not adding a veteran star at receiver is forced to change. When the conversation shifts from McConkey to Omarion Hampton, this stops being only about explosiveness through the air. This is about power, volume, quarterback protection, and identity. ESPN's Matt Bowen listed Hampton as a breakout candidate for 2026, and that read is not coming out of nowhere. The rookie lost rhythm because of an ankle injury, played only 9 games in 2025, and still flashed like a player who can change the temperature of an offense. There were big games. There was production. There was that feeling that if the body cooperates and the structure helps, year 2 can look completely different. But I want to bring this back to the point that really matters for Chargers fans. Fantasy football is fun for debate, projections, and headlines. Los Angeles does not need Hampton looking pretty on a spreadsheet. Los Angeles needs Hampton breaking tackles, shortening games, punishing light boxes, and forcing rival coordinators to respect the ground game before they send everything at Justin Herbert. Because that is what was missing too many times. Herbert became the safety net, the emergency plan, the guy asked to solve 3rd and long, free rushers, tight scores, and an offense with no rhythm. That is not a championship plan. That is overload. And if Mike McDaniel really brings in a smarter, more mobile, more creative offense with heavier personnel, Hampton becomes a central weapon. Alec Ingold's arrival ties directly into that. McDaniel used plenty of 21 personnel in Miami, with 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 2 receivers. That package lets Ingold work as a lead blocker, a motion piece, and an angle manipulator. And for Hampton, that is gold. A good fullback does not only show up by moving bodies, he creates numbers to the play side, forces linebackers into bad choices, and opens that half second that separates an ordinary gain from an explosive run. Then there is the tight end detail. With Charlie Kolar and David Njoku in the group, the Chargers can vary formations, hide intent, sell run and attack through the air, or line up heavy without becoming predictable. That is the kind of offense that bothers people. It is not running the ball just to be stubborn. It is making the defense think before the snap. If Hampton stays healthy, with a better interior line and a coordinator who knows how to manufacture space, the jump can be violent. And the real impact is not only in his yards. It is Herbert taking fewer hits, the offense looking less desperate, and the Chargers finally having a physical base that can hold up when January shows up without asking permission. Hold on to this shift, because McConkey and Hampton are huge pieces. But one name sits above the entire board: Justin Herbert. And this is where Mike McDaniel walks in with a responsibility nobody should soften. The Chargers are coming off back-to-back 11-6 seasons, back-to-back playoff trips, and 2 beatdowns that left a terrible taste. A 32-12 loss in Houston, then a 16-3 loss in New England. Combined, 48-15. That is not a footnote. That is pressure screaming inside the locker room. I will say it the way fans feel it. Enough with good seasons that die looking small. Greg Roman built a conservative offense, heavy on the run, with Herbert often pushed into the background. In 2024, the team finished with more rushing yards per game than passing yards per game, something the franchise had not done since 2007. Can you understand the attempt to create a physical identity? Sure, but when you have a quarterback at that level, hiding his arm cannot become a permanent philosophy. Herbert threw for 3,837 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions that regular season. But the disaster against the Texans, with 4 picks in the wildcard round, became ammo for everyone who loves trying to diminish him. Then 2025 came, and the situation got even more brutal. Rashawn Slater missed the whole year. Joe Alt had to survive out of position for 11 games. The interior line struggled, and Herbert took 54 sacks in 16 games. Even then, he cleared 3,700 yards, threw 26 touchdowns, and kept carrying an offense that often seemed to ask for miracles instead of giving him structure. In the playoff game against the Patriots, he took 6 more sacks and lost a fumble. You cannot play like that and then act like the quarterback has to put out the fire by himself. McDaniel is here to break that cycle. He knows playoff pressure, he knows frustration, he knows explosive offense, and he knows how to create space. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated went even further and said that if the Chargers win and Herbert gets into the MVP conversation, McDaniel will quickly get back on the head coaching radar. And what does that show you? The league understands the size of this pairing. A creative coordinator, an elite quarterback, young weapons growing, and a running game that can finally force defenses to drop their guard. Bolt Squad, drop one word in the comments: MVP or redemption? Because to me, both can walk together. If McDaniel unlocks Herbert, that is not just a statistical jump. That is a violent answer to everyone who confused lack of structure with lack of greatness. Herbert does not need to prove his talent. Los Angeles needs to build an offense worthy of him. And now the conversation flips to the other side of the ball, but the demand stays the same. The Chargers cannot be passive when they already know the next essential piece. Derwin James got the contract he had to get. 3 years, $75.6 million, back at the top of the safety market. Nobody who truly follows this team should treat that like an overpay. Derwin is the key that lets this defense breathe, disguise, attack at different levels, and survive in a world where quarterbacks read everything too fast. But Derwin's extension also leaves another question sitting right in the middle of the room. What about Tuli Tuipulotu? Because if Los Angeles secured the safety net in the back end and the slot, now it has to secure the future of the pass rush. Khalil Mack is still a monster who deserves respect. Fair is fair. When healthy, he still wrecks protection, still demands attention, and still carries star presence. But the clock does not negotiate with anybody. After his 17-sack season in 2023, the production dipped to 6 sacks in 2024 and 5.5 sacks in 2025, in a season affected by that nasty arm injury in Week 2. His return was impressive, but it also showed the reality this franchise cannot ignore. Mack enters his age 35 season on a 1-year deal. Maybe there is still fuel. Maybe he still delivers strong snaps. But building the future of the pass rush like he can carry everything much longer would be competitive negligence. That is where Tuli becomes an absolute priority. In his 3rd season with the Chargers, the leap was ridiculous. 13 sacks, 20 tackles for loss, and 23 quarterback hits. That is not decorative production. That is impact. That is a player changing drives. That is the piece that forces opposing offenses to adjust protection, speed up reads, call for help, and think twice before leaving a tackle alone. Can you debate the price? Of course. A deal above $25 million per year scares any front office when the elite sample is still relatively short. But the aggressive question is different. What is the real alternative? Akeem Mesidor can grow, he has talent, and he arrives as a first-round investment, but he still has to prove it in the NFL. Mack is not the long-term plan. And playing around with Tuli's contract into training camp, risking a hold-in, noise, and distraction, would be asking for problems for free. The Chargers got it right with Derwin. Now they need to show the same instinct with Tuli. A team trying to win in the AFC does not wait for the market to get more expensive before protecting its source of pressure. In the end, these 4 stories are telling the same story from different angles. McConkey has to become a star because the team chose to trust its own development. Hampton has to explode because Herbert cannot carry the offense with his arm and his body every single week. McDaniel has to turn creativity into playoff wins, not pretty speeches. And Tuli has to be treated like a priority before the future of the pass rush becomes a tense negotiation. The Chargers have talent. They have the quarterback. They have pieces that can rise. Now comes the part that separates an exciting franchise from a dangerous one. Decisions, execution, and courage. If you believe 2026 has to be the turnaround year, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Bolt up.